We're going to talk about arrays in Java. The introduction goes like this. So we have seen how to store single pieces of data in variables. But what happens when we need to store a group of data? What if we have a list of students in a classroom or a ranking of the top 10 horses finishing a horse race? If we were storing 5 lottery ticket numbers, for example, we could create a different variable for each value. So we've seen this one so far. We have the type of the data, the name of the variable, and then we have the value that gets stored in the variable. And in this case, we will have to create 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 variables to store 5 different numbers. This is a lot of ungainly repeated code. What if we had 100 lottery numbers? It is more clean and convenient to use a Java array to store the data as a list. An array holds a fixed number of values of one type. Arrays hold doubles, ints, booleans, and other primitives. Arrays can also contain a string or any other objects. Each index of an array corresponds with a different value. Here is a diagram of an array filled with integer values. So we would have these values, so 4, 8, 15, 16, and 23, and we would store all these values in one single variable that is an array. Okay. Now, each value has an index starting at 0. So the first value would have the indices at 0. Second value would have the indices as 1, and then so on and so forth until we get to the end of the number of elements stored in that array. Now, we have to notice that the indexes start at 0. So the element at index 0 is 4, being the first element in that array, while the element at index 1 is 8. So the element at index 1 is 8. This array has a length of 5 since it holds 5 elements. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But the highest index of the array is 4. Yeah. Let's explore how to create and use arrays in Java so that we can store all of our Java data types. Now, if we have a look at the instructions, it goes like this. In the newsfeed.java, so in our file, we have created a newsfeed class to keep track of trending articles and their associated views and ratings. We did this using Java arrays, which you'll learn about throughout the lesson. For now, just run the code to see some of our method calls. So we have this class, we have some instance variables of type array, but of type string, but this is an array, yeah. And we're gonna see in the next lesson how we actually declare an array, so a variable, an array variable. Okay, so if we're gonna run this, we get the output from this newsfeed.java file. Okay, let's go on to the next lesson. Creating an array explicitly. So imagine that we're using a program to keep track of the prices of different clothing items we want to buy. We want a list of the prices and a list of the items they correspond to. To create an array, we first declare the type of data that it holds. We've seen this one so far. So we have the name, we have the data type that this variable is gonna hold, but because we're gonna store more than one element, more than one value inside this variable, we have to add these parentheses, okay? So these square parentheses, that is gonna show that this variable is an actual array of double values, okay? Then we can explicitly initialize the array to contain the data we want to store. So we have declared on this line, we've declared a variable whose name is prices, but this variable is an array, which is denoted by these parentheses, well, these brackets, And then we have the data type of the values that we're going to store in this variable. Okay, so then we take the name of this variable and we say prices equals to, and then we give it the values that we want to store in this variable, in this array variable. Okay, just like with simple variables, we can declare and initialize in the same line. So here on this line, we see how to do these two steps on one single line. So rather than doing it on two different lines, we can declare and initialize this variable. Okay, so we have the name of the variable, we have the data type that is going to store, and we know this variable is going to store multiple elements, is going to store multiple values inside, because we have these brackets here. Yeah, and inside curly brackets we have to put the elements that we're going to store inside of this variable. We can use arrays to hold strings and other objects as well as primitives. Okay, so we have, for example, here on this in this example, we have a variable called clothing items, and we know this variable is going to store elements of string type, and we know this is also an array, yeah, because it has more than one value stored inside. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 elements in total in this variable. Okay, and for example, this element is going to have the index 0, this element is going to have index 1, this element is going to have index 2, and this element is going to have index 3. Okay, now if we have a look at the instructions, we have an empty newsfeed class that does not store anything yet. First, we have to make a method called getTopics, which is public. So let's create a method that is public. The name of the method is getTopic. Is public, returns a string array, and does not take any parameters. Okay, so returns, since it returns a string array, we have to add returns. Well, it says to leave the method body empty, but we know, because it's going to return a string array, we know that here we have to add string like so. Okay, we are gonna run this, and of course we are gonna get some sort of an error because it says to leave the method empty, so we're not adding anything yet. Okay, and of course we are getting the missing return statement. Our instruction is complete, so the instruction number 1. Now if we have a look at instruction number 2, it says inside the getTopic method, create a string array called topics. So inside here we have to create a string array, so string, and we're going to add the square parentheses or square brackets, however you want to call them, and the name of this variable is going to be topics, and we set it equal to an array containing these elements in order. Okay, so we have these elements, and if you remember, we need to add squiggly brackets like so, and though these, what I've just pasted now, these are the values or the elements of our array separated by comma. And of course, because they are string, we have to enclose each of them in double quotes. Okay, so now we've populated our variable that holds strings, and this is an array. Okay, so it's more than one value stored inside of this variable. Then return topics from the method. So of course we have to return topics. Okay, like so. If I'm gonna, and this, so the code we added here on line 11 now satisfies the the condition we had in this instruction, which is return a string array. We are returning a string array. So this topics, well, actually we have to put it like this. Okay, topics, we know that is a string array. So the values, the type of the values that it stores is of type string. And of course it's an array because it has the square brackets here. If I'm gonna run this now, of course we don't get anything on the screen, but as you will see, we don't have any more errors showing up. Now, if we have a look at the instruction number 3, it says uncomment the lines in the main method to see how the getTopics method works on a newsfeed instance. So essentially it's telling us to delete the comment typing here. So this one, the / and the asterisk, to see how this method works on a newsfeed instance. So let's have a look at the code here on line 17 and 18, including actually 15 as well. So we have from this class, from the newsfeed class, we're creating an object on this line. So on the line 15, we're making a new object by using the new keyword, and then we're calling the constructor, which is this one here. And it's a very simple empty constructor. Okay. Then on the line number 17, we have our a variable called topics, which holds an array of strings, which gets set equal to sample feed dot get topics. So sample feed being our object, and on our object we are calling the get topics method that we just described here, we just created here. And then if we call the method system.out.println on our topics, so we want to display on the screen the topics here, let's see what happens when we run it. Okay, we are getting something that we've seen before when we looked at when we tried to print an object. Okay, so when we simply try to print an object using this, so system.out.println, printing an object. Okay, and this includes the type of that of this variable and the location in memory where this variable exists. Okay, we're gonna move on to the next lesson, and it says now importing arrays. When we printed out the array we created in the last exercise, we saw a memory address that did not help us understand what was contained in the array. Indeed, it was a very kind of weird output that we got here that didn't really tell us anything about the contents of our array. Okay, if we want to have a more descriptive printout of the array itself, we need a toString method that is provided by the arrays package in Java. And we see here this keyword called import, and then we have java.util.arrays. We put this at the top of the file before we even define the class. So we will have to put it somewhere at the top here. When we import a package in Java, we are making all of the methods of that package available to our code. So whenever we're importing this package, all the methods available in this package called arrays are going to become available to us, and we can access them, we can use them. The arrays package has many useful methods, including arrays.toString. When we pass an array into the arrays.toString method, we can see the contents of the array printed out. So we are importing here on this line, we're importing the this package, the package called arrays. And then we have a class called lottery, and then we have the main method, and inside this main method we are creating a variable that holds an array of ints, and the name of the variable is lottery numbers, and the elements in this variable are 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, and 42. Now on the next line we have a variable, a regular variable, we've seen it so far. So the name of this variable is better printout of type string, and the value that gets stored in this variable is gonna be a call to the class arrays dot toString, and we're passing it the lottery numbers. So we're passing it our array of ints to the arrays dot string. Okay, and now if on the next line, if we're trying to print out the better printout variable, we're actually gonna see the elements of the array of ints we just created, instead of seeing on the screen all that kind of jumbled up output that includes the location in memory of that variable. So this code above will print 4, 8, and so on, all of this being the elements of this variable. Okay. Now in the instructions, it goes like this. In order to make our printout of the topics array, so in order to make this printout more helpful, we're going to want to use the toString method from the arrays package. To use it, we first must import the arrays package from java.util. Import the package at the top of the newsfeed Java file. So we have to go at the top of the file and we use the keyword import java.util.arrays. Okay, so by doing this, by writing this line of code, we are importing all the methods available to that are already exist in the array class. Okay. All right, so to use it, we are importing this. Fine, we're gonna run it. And now that we have the arrays package, we can use its toString method to print out the topics array in the main method. Okay, so what we can do is, let's just double check that we've imported this properly. java.util.arrays. Yeah, we've done that. Get topics, and then what we can do is to say a string here called topics, and then this topics gets assigned a value like so, arrays toString, but of course instead of lottery numbers as we had in our example, we're going to pass it topics, and then we're going to try and print out the topics in the new format. And of course we've just run into an error. Did you print the array using the system.out.printarray, or like this? Okay, it's fine. Or we can just take this whole line and just print it here. Okay, like so, and then we get rid of this line. It's exactly the same thing. Now if we are printing out this variable that holds an array of strings, but we're printing it using the arrays.toString method that is made available to us because we've imported the java.util arrays, then we're actually getting the elements that are stored in this variable. Okay, we can move on to the next lesson, and we're going to talk about get element by index. Now that we have an array declared and initialized, we want to be able to get the values out of it. We use square brackets, which are these, to access data at a certain index. So for example, if we have a variable that holds an array of doubles, and these are the elements that are stored in our array, then if we're on the next line, if we're going to try and print out the element with the index 1 from our variable, on the output we should get 15.87, because if you remember, the indexes of the elements that exist in our variable start at 0. So this one would be element at index 0, this would be element at index 1. And since we're printing here on this line, we're printing element at index 1 from our array variable prices, then of course we're going to get the output 15.87, okay, which is this one. Because 15.87 is the element at index 1 of the array. Remember that arrays start at index 0. Now if we have a look at the instructions, it says we have augmented the newsfeed class to start with the topics array as an instance field. Fill in the getTopic method to return the 0th index of the topics array. Okay, so we have to go to the getTopic method, which is this one, and we have to fill in this method to return the 0th, so the element at index 0 from the topics array. So in here we have to say return topics, and then we give it the index. We want index 0. Okay, so by doing this we say return. Whenever we call this method, we know it has to return a string, and that string should be the element that exists in this variable at index 0. If I'm gonna run this, there you go. The top topic is opinion. Why is it opinion? Well, because opinion is the element at index 0 in our array. Okay, it says, but wait, we added more to the newsfeed class. Now each instance starts with an array of zeros called views as instance field. Every time someone views a topic, we want to increment the value of the appropriate field in views. So we have this one here. For example, if someone views an opinion piece, we want to increase the value of the 0th index of views from 0 to 1. If they view it again, we want to increase the value to 2. We have written a method signature for view topic, which is, let's have a look, view topic is this one here on line 20, which takes an int called topic index. So this would be, it takes a parameter, okay? Inside this method, set the value of the views array at the index topic index. So we want to set the value of the views array at index topic index. So we want to say array at the index topic index, whatever value we're gonna have here. So we're gonna copy this and do it like so, equals to the current value plus 1. Okay, so the current value would be arrays at topic index plus 1. Let's see if this works, okay? And of course we're getting a big error because obviously I've done something wrong. But let's work through it. Okay, so what I've done, I noticed that I had a small error here. So I put in arrays as opposed to putting views. So the name of our array is views, okay? And of course we have to have the name of the array. Instead I actually typed in arrays, which was completely wrong. So now if we run this method, of course we're going to get the topic is opinion, and the topic has been viewed 3 times. Okay, we can move on to the next lesson. And it says creating an empty array. We can also create empty arrays and then fill the items one by one. Empty arrays have to be initialized with a fixed size. Okay, so for example, on this line we have a variable that stores an array of strings, and we're using here the new keyword and the string because this is the type of values that this array is gonna hold. And here in square brackets we're gonna give it the size. So we want our variable, so our array, to hold 5 elements. Once you declare this size, it cannot be changed. This array will always be of size 5. After declaring and initializing, we can set each index of the array to be a different item. Okay, and how we can do this is by using each index. So we know it is going to have 5 elements in total. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And of course, because the index starts at 0, we're going to have index 0, index 1, index 2, index 3, index 4. Okay, and how we access each index is by using the name of the variable that stores those values, and then use in square brackets, we're going to use the actual index, and to that index we give it whatever value we want to store at that index. Okay, and you see there are a few values here added already. This group of commands has the same effect as assigning the entire array at once. So we can either do it like this, of course by doing this before. So we declare a variable that holds a string, an array of strings, and we say let the size of this array be 5. So the number of elements that this variable is going to store is going to be 5. And then on this block of code here, we would assign to each element, we're going to give it a value. But the same thing, so this one and this one could be done in a much more compact way by using what we've seen before, menu items. So we declare an array that's we declare a variable that stores an array of strings, and these are going to be the elements that are going to be stored in this variable. Okay, we can also change an item after it has been assigned. Let's say this restaurant is changing its broccoli dish to a cauliflower one. So say the one that was a broccoli, so the element at index 3 is going to be changed to something else, to a baked cauliflower. To do this, we would get the name of the variable, we would access its element at the desired index. In our case, is going to be the element positioned at index 3, and we're going to assign it this value. Now our array will look like this, okay, including the baked cauliflower, which has replaced this one, the roasted broccoli. Okay, now in the instructions it says we want a newsfeed to be able to keep track of a user's top 10 articles. We've declared a string array called favorite articles, but we haven't initialized it. In the constructor for newsfeed, set favorite articles to be a new empty string array of size 10. So in the constructor newsfeed, which is this one, we want to set favorite articles, okay, and favorite articles is this one. You want to set it to a new empty string. So we say equals new string. And then in square brackets, we have to put number 10. Why? Because we want that to be of size 10. Okay. Let's run this. And something interesting happened. If you see, we're getting on the screen based on whatever we're getting here from, so this output is the result of the code at line 28, where we are printing on the screen our favorite articles. Our favorite articles, we know are gonna be 10 elements. But since we have not initialized yet the values in this array, we're gonna get null. Okay, so this is a new thing that we haven't seen so far. Now, if we have a look at the instruction number 2, it says inside the method set favorite articles, set the value of the favorite article. So we have to go to set favorite article, which is this one. So set the value of the favorite articles array at index favorite articles. So the favorite articles at this index, we want to set it to the value of the new article. So whatever we're going to pass it here, we want that to be its value that is assigned to our favorite articles variable at index, whatever this index we're going to pass it here. Okay. For example, if we called this method set favorite article, and we call it with an integer 2, and we call it also with a string celebrity hands throughout the decades, okay, then the value of the favorite articles at index 2 will be set to whatever value we passed it in here. Okay, so in here, if we're gonna run this, there you go, we have gotten the some of the elements have been already populated. Some of the values of those elements have been already populated. Okay, and this oil news is this one. Okay, so it says the index 0, make it be oil news. At index 2, make it be this one. At index 3, make it be this one. Let's move on to the next lesson. Now we are looking at the length. Okay, so the array's length. What if we have an array storing all the usernames for our program, and we want to quickly see how many users we have? To get the length of an array, we can access the length field of the array object. Okay, so say we have, and we've seen this one before, we're declaring a variable that holds an array of strings, and how many elements this this new variable is going to hold? Well, it's going to be 5. Okay, and then on the next line, we take the variable and we access the dot length property, okay, or field, which is gonna give us back 5 because that is the number of elements that this variable is gonna store. This command will print 5 since the menu items array has 5 slots, even though they're all empty. If we print out the length of the prices array, so we have an array called prices, and this array is going to store doubles, so it's going to store an array of doubles, and these are the elements or the values that are going to be stored in here. Now if we get the length of this, so that this dot length is going to return us the number of elements that we have. This is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. So we would see 4 since there are 4 items in the prices array. Now if we have a look at the instructions, it says in the method getNumTopics, return the length of the topics array. So in the getNumTopics, we say return the topics, we return the length of the topics array. So we want to return topics dot length, like so. Let's try and run this, and we get the number of topics is 4. We're gonna move on to the next lesson, and it says string args. Okay, so when we write main methods for our programs, we use the parameter string args. Okay, so we have a variable that stores an array of strings. Now that we know about the array syntax, we can start to parse what it means. So a string with these square brackets is an array made up of strings. Example of string arrays. We have this one. So for example, it's a variable that holds an array of strings, and these are the elements. This one is a variable that stores an array of strings, and it holds these values. Okay. The args parameter is another example of a string array. In this case, the array args contains the arguments that we pass in from the terminal when we run the class file. So far, args has been empty. So how can you pass arguments to the main? Let's say we have this class hello you. So we have a class, we've seen it so far, we have our main method, and inside our main method we have args, which is a variable that stores an array of strings. And then we say, inside the main, we say system.out.print hello args at index 0. Okay, so the value, the element that is stored at index 0, we want to print out on the screen hello concatenated or joined with the value of the index 0 of this array. Okay, when we run the hello you in the terminal with an argument of Laura, we would get hello Laura. Okay, so we would get this plus this one. Okay, so if we were to run this Java hello you Laura, okay, we would get the output hello Laura. The string args would be interpreted as an array with one element, and that's the value of that element is Laura. When we use args and we are trying to access the element at index 0 in the main method, we can access that element like we did in the hello you. Now in the instructions, we want to give the user an option to make a newsfeed objects for robots or for humans. We will take either robot or human as an argument to the main method when the newsfeed Java file is run. If the args array holds human, we will initialize the feed with human topics. If the args array holds robot, we will initialize the feed with robot topics. Replace the blank in the conditional statement to reflect this expected control flow. Okay, in this case, what we need to do is to replace the blank in the conditional statement to reflect this expected control flow. And the blank in the conditional statement is here situated on line 19, and we have to delete whatever we have there, and we have to replace it with an actual value that is gonna evaluate to something. Okay, so in our case, we know that we have to find this args at element 0. Okay, so in our args we have to take its index 0, okay, which is gonna be its first element, and we say dot equals, and we've seen this one before when we were comparing strings. Okay, so objects, and in parentheses, if you remember, we need to add the value that we want to compare to. Okay, so the other value would be robots. Okay, so in this case we're looking at the element at index 0, so therefore the first element in the args, and we say we're essentially asking, is this equals to robot? Okay, and then depending on that we will get some sort of an output. Okay, we're gonna run it, So we've completed this instruction number 1. Now it says in instruction number 2, it says in the terminal, run the newsfeed.java file with the argument robot. So the way we have to do this is we get the Java. Okay, so we write in Java, then we write in the name of our class, which is newsfeed. Okay, and we have to pass it our argument robot. Okay, and let's see what happens if we run this. Okay, let's see, nothing has happened yet. Let's run it again. Well, first let's try and compile actually this class. So if you remember, well, we're going to compile this file, so then it turns into a class. We have to say java c newsfeed okay, well, newsfeed.java. I'm forgetting, it looks like I'm forgetting my own rules. Okay, and now this newsfeed.java has been transformed into a class, so a newsfeed. Therefore now we should be able to say java newsfeed and then call it with whatever argument it was requested of us to do. So robot. Okay, let's see. Wait, robot. Okay, and now it worked. So we have the topics in the feed are oil, parts, algorithms, and love. And then let's try and run it once more with human. Then we have the array being populated with politics, science, sports, and love, which are corresponding to the human argument that we just passed here. Let's go on to the last lesson, so lesson 8. And we have the review lesson essentially. We have now seen how to store a list of values in arrays. We can use this knowledge to make organized programs with more complex variables. Throughout the lesson, we have learned about creating an array explicitly using the curly braces here, accessing an array, well, accessing an index of an array using the square brackets, and creating an empty array of a certain size and filling the indices one by one, getting the length of an array using length, using the argument array args that is passed into the main method of a class. Now if we have a look at the instructions, it says in order to practice the skills you've learned so far throughout the lesson, we're going to make and use some arrays in the main method of a new classroom class. Okay, first inside the main, so inside the main method, we want to make a string array called students. So inside here, we want to say string, and we know that this is going to be an array and it's going to be called students. And we set it equal to the following elements. Okay, we assign these elements like so. Okay, and one more. So first one is gonna be this one, next one is gonna be this one, next one is this one, and next one is this one. Okay, so far so good. Let's try and run this. Okay, we completed instruction number 1. We don't have any errors. If we have a look at the instruction number 2, we're going to store the averages on the most recent math test. Create an array called math scores and set it to an empty array of size 4. It should hold doubles. Okay, so what we know so far is that we need to create an array of doubles, and we show it's an array by including these square brackets. The name of the array is going to be math scores, and we know we should set it to an empty array of size 4. So we say new double, and then we say 4. I guess we should say it like this, double 4. Okay. Okay. We've completed instruction number 2. If we have a look at instruction number 3, it said Said got a 94.5 on the test. Store this value in the 0th index of the math scores array. So we got to get this value, and we know that Said, which is the first element in the in our array, meaning that it has the index 0. So we say student, or let's think about it for a second. So store this value in the 0th index of the math scores array. So we have to say math scores at index 0 equals to 94.5. Okay, let's run this. Okay, all seems good. Sam got a 76.8 on the test. Store this value in the appropriate spot in the math scores array. So we do again math scores. Let's see what index we have Sam. So Sam is 1, 2, 3. So is the third element in the array, meaning that its index is gonna be 0, 1, 2. So at index 2 is gonna have 76.8. Okay, if we're gonna run this as well. Okay, and then on the we have to write a print statement to say the number of students in the class is number of students. Okay, we have to use the system.out.print ln, and in here we have to use this text. So the number of students in the class is this, and we have to concatenate this with the number of students. And in order to get the number of students, we have to get the name of the variable that stores the students, and we also have to access, using the dot notation, we have to access its length. Okay, so it should be like this. Let's run it and see whether this is gonna work. And we get the number of students in the class is 4. Well, of course, if we want to make it look really nice, we have to also put a space in between here, because you see, if I've omitted the space in here, then is and number 4 are going to be joined together. So if I'm going to run it again, now it looks a bit better. And this concludes the last lesson in our arrays chapter.